This is BD World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali and you're watching Faultlines. Foreign policy is one of the key areas of significance for every government in almost every country of the world, and more importantly for a country like Pakistan. Pakistan enjoys great significant relationship with China and also with the United States of America, but both the countries since 2010 have been diplomatically drifting apart to an extent that it has become very difficult to have a balance between the relationship with these two countries. Pakistan time and again have taken the stance that it has equal significance and would not be part of a particular bloc. But the developments between the two sides have been quite surprising and astonishing for particularly a country like Pakistan, which on one end has a great long-standing relationship with its neighboring country China and has a history of diplomatic relationship with the United States as well, which is one of the major buyers, rather the largest buyers of Pakistan's exports. Importantly, in last 2 years, the relationship between Pakistan and neighboring Afghanistan has also been on a negative trajectory. We recently had some skirmishes with neighboring Iran, after which Iran's foreign minister came to Pakistan and both the countries tried to take steps to overcome the differences, yet it is quite a difficult time for both the countries, as there are many things in the pipeline which require both the countries to look into this relationship more importantly. And Pakistan's relationship with neighboring India has been in a state of freeze for the last several years. Amid all of this situation, the new government takes cards under the stewardship of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and it is to be seen how does the new government take the challenges of the foreign policy. To talk about this very pertinent subject, we have invited Syed Muhammad Ali, who is one of the leading experts on the subject. Ali, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Ali, how do you think the relationship between Pakistan and the United States going? Because ever since US's interests have checked out of Afghanistan, we have seen United States not taking Pakistan as seriously as it used to be in the past. Would you agree with me on that?
I think, Shabahat, I would categorize Pak-US relationship and its current stage as expanding and deepening. Because, for 75 years, the common main issue and common interest has been security and regional stability. But I think it's a positive development for both countries that now beyond security, we are also diversifying and expanding our relations in the economic, trade, environmental aspects as well. And most importantly, both countries recognize that our vibrant diaspora continues to be an enduring bridge to maintain mutually beneficial relationship between both countries. And I think with the passage of time, although security remains a very important common interest, not just in terms of countering the threat regarding terrorism, but also maintaining strategic stability in South Asia, despite the military buildup of India. And also, we have realized that US is Pakistan's largest export market, and we value the US goodwill, which is important, even in terms of the multilateral financial institutions, relief arrangements as well. So I think there are different aspects which makes both countries value this bilateral relationship as multidimensional but precious. And I think despite the upcoming US elections, I think both Democrats and Republicans increasingly view its relationship with Pakistan as important and necessary to maintain close, cordial relationship across several domains.
Ali, you talk quite frequently about the regional security and the United States' interest in the regional security of this region with a specific focus on the developments inside Afghanistan. But don't you agree that the United States interest has, over a period of time, increased in its engagements with China, positively or negatively? And China has become more of a focus for the US, causing its check out of interest from various other areas, including the regional security of subcontinent and particularly the regional security in Afghanistan.
I think that's a very important question. I think traditionally, number of international observers and commentators have been oversimplifying the complex nature of the Sino-US relationship. Although there is competition in several domains, but there is also significant stake in maintaining useful and mutually beneficial relationship between Beijing and Washington. And I think there is a greater realization that this relationship based on competition rather than confrontation is more useful. However, there are areas in which both countries continue to engage and cooperate peacefully for common interests. And very importantly, I think I must emphasize that regional security and regional stability in South Asia is perhaps a common interest for both Beijing and Washington. And that is something which actually dispels the misperceptions and expectations that Pakistan needs to be part of a bloc politics. And I see that as a positive sign with the arrival of the new government in Islamabad, that there is immediate clarity that Pakistan does not need to engage in bloc politics, and on the basis of bilateral cooperation, we will engage with both Beijing and Washington, and we will not be part of any bloc politics, but on the areas of common concern and common interest, like counterterrorism, like connectivity, like economic development, like regional stability. I think Islamabad's new government will engage meaningfully, constructively, and productively with both Washington and Beijing.
Well, you have brought China into the discussion, so I must ask you, how do you view the situation between Pakistan and China? Because traditionally, this relationship was always good, was always a great relationship between the two sides. But with CPAC being engaged and with Pakistan's increasing economic stress with regards to the external loan, I think the significance of China as a rescuer have increased over a period of time for Pakistan. How do you view that?
I think it is very important for our viewers and international audience to realize that Pakistan's relationship with Beijing is special and precious. However, it is not against any other country. That is very important. The main common interest between Beijing and Islamabad is regional security, regional stability, regional connectivity, and regional economic progress. And these are the four objectives which are not aimed at any other third country. And I think that is one very important aspect which I'm sure Pakistan's new leadership will assure Washington as well, that Pakistan's growing economic and trade-related relationship with China is aimed at developing Pakistan, economic progress, improving the quality of life of this of our nation, and promoting regional connectivity and trade. And it is not aimed at countering, containing, or challenging any other country or power.
Over many shows many times in this show, you have spoken about Pakistan and Iran enjoying great relationship with each other. Unfortunately, again, Iran's relationship with the United States has not stabilized over a period of time. Things perhaps have gone from bad to worse. And this becomes very important when Iran is about to finalize or has already asked Pakistan to finalize things with regards to the gas pipeline agreement that Pakistan has made, whereas Iran still remains under sanctions. How will that transform into a challenge or an opportunity for this government, which is going to engage with Iran diplomatically, where this gas pipeline issue will remain to be a pertinent issue to be discussed between the two sides?
I think it is very important to understand that Pakistan's perspective towards Iran is again neither influenced by great power rivalry or regional geopolitics, but based on our close, cordial, historic ties, based on mutual respect and understanding and respect for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. When it comes to the great power rivalry or world order transformation, we do not see Iran in that context. Secondly, in terms of the Middle Eastern geopolitics, we again have consistently and very carefully and responsibly maintained a very balanced approach between mutually beneficial and bilateral relations with all Arab countries as well as Iran. So at the third level, I think at the moment we are looking at improving and expanding our relations with Iran for common economic and energy cooperation in order to surmount our energy challenges as well as explore new markets for our exports. So these are the two areas in which I think there is immense potential for both countries to benefit from greater economic cooperation without engaging in any geopolitical or geostrategic contestation. However, I must point out that the recent unfortunate episode which led to some exchange of air power across the border. I think it is very appropriate and astute and responsible on behalf of Tehran as well as Islamabad that both countries resolved and managed that crisis very timely, amicably, which led to the exchange visits, which led to the visit of the Iranian foreign minister to Islamabad. And I look forward to improving and expanding these ties further for the common interest of improving our economic progress and building our trade ties in future.
Now let's talk about Afghanistan. And Ali, you have spoken about Afghanistan and Pakistan several times in my show as well. We have been, as I said in the beginning, not enjoying a great time with each other for the last 2 years. I mean, Pakistan and Afghanistan have seen a series of events that could have been avoided. So do you think there are any chances of improving the bilateral relationship with Afghanistan? Do you see any appetite inside Afghanistan to improve its relationship with Pakistan, which in my personal opinion is more significant for Afghanistan than it is for Pakistan?
I think to summarize, I would say that unfortunately in the last 2 years, the Afghan interim government seems to have disappointed Pakistan because it has fallen short of the expectations of not just Pakistan but the neighbors and the international community regarding living up to its commitment of forming an inclusive government, of stabilizing its country, of ensuring that its territory and resources are not used against any other country and preventing the terrorist attacks from its territory against Pakistan, but also against other countries. So these are the four very important commitments that Afghan interim government made and very rational and important expectations from Islamabad. So I think the ball is in the court of Kabul that if it wants to be diplomatically recognized, if it expects to be mainstreamed and become part of a useful member of the international community, which commands respect, trust, and is also able to attract investment and cooperation. You know, Pakistan has offered extending CPEC to with Chinese cooperation to Afghanistan as well. But that these opportunities will only translate into a better quality of life for the Afghani people once its leadership realizes that it needs to have a responsible attitude towards statecraft and ensure and respect the genuine security concerns of Pakistan and other neighbors and fulfill its commitment that its territory will not be used by any non-state actor against Pakistan in particular, but all the other neighbors and international community in general. And that is a growing concern which unfortunately not just Pakistan, is also shared by other neighbors of Afghanistan, but also Western countries and international community, including the US. So I think the onus is on Kabul to ensure that it lives up to its commitment, ensure that it exercises responsible statecraft, prevents and eliminates terrorism from its territory, and proves that it is a responsible and committed member of international community, which wants to promote and contribute towards regional security, and also benefit from the opportunities of connectivity and progress that this region is witnessing.
Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali, for being guest in the show.
Always a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join you back with second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, the second segment of the program. We are going to discuss Pakistan's economic challenges as the new government has taken cards. There is a very dire economic situation. This is the elephant in the room that the new government has to address, and to add into its difficulty, the provinces belong to different political parties and there is a hybrid government in place in Islamabad, which is a coalition of various political forces coming together hands in hand. And this is going to make it more difficult for them to take decisions that are required. Just to tell you about the gravity of the situation, while Pakistan is in conversations and negotiations with IMF for release of $1.1 billion of the last tranche of the commitment that IMF had made, the circular debt at the moment is around 5.7 trillion rupees, out of which 2.70 trillion rupees are in the energy sector, and another 3.02 are in the gas sector. Going forward, it's also very important for Pakistan to come up with a strategy which allows it to be independent of these international lenders, which have become quite a frequent phenomenon over the last couple of years. We have seen governments after governments, Pakistan going back to IMF, and this actually shrinks the freedom of the economic decision making, which every political government dreams about. To talk about this very pertinent subject, I have today invited Dr. Mahmod Khalid. Dr. Mahmod is a professor, he's an economist, he's an author, he's a researcher, works at Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. So I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Before I ask you any question, how do you see the overall economic situation of the country when the new government takes cards?
Well, actually, you have rightly spoken in the very beginning that what kind of, I would not say crisis, but kind of a condition which reflects the poor planning and the state of economy actually we have been going through. So from a perspective of where we are standing now, it's a kind of a crisis moment from the balance of payment side, as well as on the domestic side, where we have rightly mentioned that we have got some debts on our part, which we have to not only serve in terms of the cost for the debt, but also think about that from where actually they emanated and how we can actually tackle them. So you have also mentioned about the IMF. What we think from outside, it's actually not IMF, it's the problems with the economy. IMF is just an institution which sort of highlights the problems, and he actually points out as a creditor that these should be resolved. But inherently we have got structural problems in our economic structure which we have to really think through, and having a new government in town does not mean that the problems are going to quickly go away. Again, we have to think through that from where it started and where the solution is going to be at the end of the day.
Dr. Shab, as a kindergarten student of economics, I always look at the institutions that are responsible for the social security, be it Benazir Income Support Program, be it social welfare funds. It always brings a question in my mind how Pakistan can afford the luxury of dishing out cash to the people once we have such a drastic economic situation. Now, my question to you is, how IMF is going to look into these social security schemes, and can Pakistan afford the luxury of continuing the same?
Well, actually, these social security schemes are not developed when the economies are very good. Ideally, these are needed more when the economic crisis is actually happening. So, IMF understands this, and actually they have also mentioned it in their last document, in which they reviewed what kind of policies and programs we have developed for the social sector protection. This time also they have allowed us to focus not just on the structural reform, but trying to prevent the negative impacts of those structural reforms on the most poorer segment of the economy by protecting enough resources for the most vulnerable people. And you have rightly mentioned, Benazir Income Support Program is one of those main programs through which we actually provide the support to the social protection. But having said that, you have actually pointed out to another issue, that how are we actually protecting them? Simply giving them cash without any conditions, is that the right way to do? That is something which IMF wants us to reconsider, and especially the number of social protection programs or interventions which the government makes, that all needs to be consolidated. Like for example, the recent government has announced the Ramzan package. That is something which is very good, because that's again targeting the most vulnerable. But does it fit in terms of the whole program of social protection? Giving tariff subsidies to those who have less than 300 units of electricity consumption, that's also part of kind of social protection. But does that also consolidates the way the government is approaching towards this total sector? And you have rightly mentioned that having provincial governments on board, we have got about 3 social welfare or social protection programs with them as well. Are they working in the right direction, and can we think about sort of consolidating them? That questions are also asked from the government.
Dr. Saab, to add further into the complexity of this question for people like me who are not expert of the subject, there are provinces with far more autonomy with the devolution, and they are coming up with their own mechanisms of reaching out the poorest strata of society and to try to help them out. We are seeing the health programs generously rolling out money, and we are seeing many other things in the pipeline. How will that set into the overall scheme of things? Because when the international lenders speak to you, they speak to you as one government. They do not speak to you with 5 different governments, 4 provincial and a federal, and having this conversation. So how will that go hands in hands?
Well, actually they have asked us to kind of roll back on the massive subsidies and grants which we offer in the name of these vulnerable segments of the society. Because at the end of the day, whatever amount is provided to them does not go into their pockets only. It indirectly goes to those activities for which these are funded for. So they are asking us to consolidate actually on all types of payments which are made towards this particular segment of the society, and try to create some integrated approach in which we can simply say that it's not just going to be based on cash transfers or giving them resources. It should be actually in terms of developing their capacity to make them or bring them out of the system. There are, generally speaking, 2 types of vulnerable segments in the society. One generally we call as those which are below the poverty line. Now they need different kinds of support, but there are other segments of society which at times cannot actually take the hit of catastrophic events. Like for example, you have mentioned the health insurance scheme and others. These are something which are contingent on some happening. So the IMF type institutions does not basically go against them, because they are based on certain happening. But the other side of the story, in which we are just paying out resources without thinking that whether these households are going to graduate at the end of the day. About almost 10 million people, or in other words around 1.5 households, they are kind of stuck in that program, getting addicted to that, and they are not getting out of that. That is something which is worrisome, not just for IMF, as I mentioned earlier, for us as an economist and for those which are working in this area.
But my essentially question was that have these provinces to take the consent of the federation while rolling out these shows, because as I said in my introduction, there are different governments. We have a different government in Sindh, we have a different government in KP with different political narrative, we have a different government in Punjab. So it's also important for them to live up with the promises that they have made to the citizenry of this country. So have they to essentially take the consent of the federation, or do they have the autonomy to do whatever they want to do?
They have the autonomy, because after the 18th Amendment, most of the spending which are relevant to the social sector, besides this BISP which is with the federal government, now lies with the province. So, any type of program which directly intervenes towards the social protection, that is the prerogative of the province, and
Now-
they are not asking.
I understand. Now, FBR has been a point of concern. We had also discussed in the same show with you regarding the modernization, the reforms that IMF had demanded, and also the previous Prime Minister, the caretaker Prime Minister, had made some important announcements. Can you help us to understand what are the major issues with FBR that require to be addressed?
Well, for FBR, we need to understand that what kind of an institution it is before we simply say that this is the solution which is going to solve. Unfortunately, like all other regulators in Pakistan, over time it has become so, I would say, magnanimous in terms of thinking that they are the ones which are going to extract the revenue and they are going to make policies. They have forgotten the basic principles how the taxation actually works. From that principle, if you go for digitization or any kind of reform which does not take into account the structural issues within the FBR, the problem is not going to go away. For example, there is just an agreement between donor and FBR in terms of digitization of the FBR, but they have missed the element that we have to actually understand the policy, the rules based on which this digitization is actually going to happen. If that does not improve, it is only going to add a layer of complexity for those individuals which otherwise may not be very comfortable even with filing the returns to go into a digital system altogether. So, before we understand that what kind of structural issues are within the FBR, simply digitization type reforms is not going to help. Like for example, to us, the first and foremost reform which is needed in the FBR is to improve the policy. We have to think about that how we are going to collect taxes, which means that we have to create a kind of a fairness in the system. We have to actually let the businesses breathe before we are going to tax them. Quick example, we have 85 types of withholding taxes. Generally speaking, the withholding taxes should not be more than 5 or maybe 6. Those activities which are actually income based on which the withholding can be made. But since the FBR is unable to take into account the economic transactions happening in the country, they are forced to actually go for that kind of withholding taxes and similar other not very optimal kind of policies. So, until unless you improve those policy structures, simply having reforms in terms of the interaction based on digitization is not going to help. That is something which we have to understand.
Dr. Shah, I have been listening to this argument since the time of Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz. He would used to say doing business is not the business of the state. And every government perhaps has gone forward with the same narrative. That said, we have not been able to privatize even one of the major state-owned enterprises. To this time, when the economy is badly bleeding, with these state-owned enterprises asking for money and their businesses are also going down because of this financial crunch, how big of a challenge this will be for this government, which, as I said earlier, is a combination of different political forces gelling in together with different political narratives, to privatize these institutions, and how significant that is for us to have better terms negotiated with institutions like IMF?
Well, actually, before we think about how we can simply lay off these state-owned enterprises, we have to actually understand that why were they created. These are enterprises with independent balance sheets in which they have their own sources of earnings, their own liabilities, a whole bunch of workers, the staff which they are working on, and a number of other assets. Now, the problem with these types of state-owned enterprises is how to value them. One common misunderstanding is, and you must have read it or heard about it, that you can simply throw it away because at the end of the day they are bleeding us more as compared to what their worth is. But who's going to buy such institutions? So, the ideal solution for such types of state-owned enterprises to be laid off is that we should use the capital markets which are present in our economy. Like for example, why not to list them in the stock exchange? Because the market is the right mechanism to price them.
But you yourself said nobody is going to buy institutions with such massive deficits in their balance sheets.
And so for that, what has happened is that in the triage report, they have actually categorized these state-owned enterprises in 3 categories. One, which are good enough to be put for any kinds of sale, whether it's through bidding or through the stock exchange. Second, which needs certain interventions to sort of clear up the mess and made good enough to be sold. And third are the ones which are going to be simply wiped out of the system by looking at their asset values and not the businesses as such. So we can use the same principle, but the mechanism through which we are trying to sell the firm, for example, looking for FDIs or for investors which are going to come from outside, are not going to come. Our simple answer is that no foreign entity can do business within Pakistan without understanding the dynamics. So stock market type institutions actually help create a kind of a partnership between the domestic investors as well as the foreign investors, because at the stock market we can also have portfolio investment. If some foreign investor is willing to invest in our country for those assets, they can come in. But at the same time, it can also be given to certain foreign investors which can take it up and do it in the best manner.
And Dr. Shab, second part of my same question was, how significant is it for this government to take some significant decision on these state-owned enterprises?
From the IMF perspective, that's a prerequisite. They've asked the government that we have to actually now do something about it. It cannot be laid off. The government cannot simply say that we don't agree on the IMF's proposal, or they cannot simply say no to this. This is something which has to improve. It's not just about 1 or 2 or 3, it's a bunch of state-owned enterprises which needs to be actually looked into.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahmod Khalid, for being guest in our show. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Mahmod Khalid has pointed out, there are key economic challenges waiting for this government to take care of them. It's very important for us to see how the government goes about it. We'll take a break and we'll join you back with last segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, once again, a brazen attack took place in one of the areas of Waziristan. Several soldiers of Pakistan army were martyred, and this is not the first time. This has been frequently happening. Afghanistan has not stabilized. Afghan Taliban have not kept the promises that they had made with the international community. These were the commitments that were made while Pakistan was trying to resolve the diplomatic issues and had played a key role in not only United States leaving Afghanistan, but also for Taliban to have a peaceful takeover of power. This arbitration was very important. Pakistan was a leading part of it, and there were expectations that once Taliban take government, at least the diplomatic situation will ease out between these two sides. What we have seen on the contrary is such events sadly taking place again and again, and this is also adding tension into the diplomatic relationship. Syed Muhammad Khalid is my guest in this part of program, and we are going to ask him why Taliban have not been able to streamline the security situation within Afghanistan. Khalid, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Khalid, your quick comments on the developments, sad developments that happened on the front of Waziristan just this morning.
It's very sad to see that Pakistan is continually facing these guerrilla attacks from the Afghanistan side. From what we know, the suicide attack that was carried out, and this was a vehicle-borne suicide attack that rammed into a military installation and detonated. We have, at this point, confirmed 7 casualties of 7 martyrs of the Pakistan Army, and we are
cannot hear you clearly, so let's try this again. So what do you think was the reason behind this, and who do you believe would be responsible? Because Afghan Taliban, every time they say they're not behind it, they do not support any group, it's a repetitive narrative that comes out every time, and we don't see any evidence or any reason to believe that they want to sort this issue out for us.
Well, if you have been paying attention to the news, Hafiz Gul Bahadur's group has taken responsibility for the attack in Meher Ali today. They, about 2 weeks ago, announced that they have rejoined the Taliban Pakistan, who has the complete protection of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Until the Afghan government, the Taliban specifically, decides to take action against these terrorist groups, we are not going to see situations improve either in Afghanistan or in Pakistan.
And why Waziristan always becomes a target? We have seen Waziristan consistently being targeted. Do you think it is because that when they try to get into the deeper pockets of KP or Balochistan, Waziristan is the place where they face maximum protection by or fortification by Pakistan Army, and that's why they want to attack Waziristan every time? Or do you see other reasons behind it?
Well, you have to understand that the FATA region itself is the border area with Afghanistan, and the TTP enjoyed from 2001 until 2013. They enjoyed complete immunity and security inside of FATA. When Raheel Sharif pushed them back across the border into Afghanistan, they set a goal for themselves that they would recapture FATA and they would capture KPK. Now, in the meantime, we have seen the TTP create paper jihadi groups that have carried out very small attacks. But if we are to believe what we are reading from the Taliban, from the TTP propaganda, they have complete shadow governments established throughout Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They are looking to expand. They have a presence in Swat. They have a presence in Banu. They have a presence in Peshawar. They are spread throughout the FATA region. This is not just a Waziristan problem. This is an entire Khyber Pakhtunkhwa problem. And our problem is with the government that's in power in Pakistan, and specifically in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They need to develop a security strategy where they can counter the border issues that we have with the Taliban and be able to counteract the sleeper cells and the cells that are operating inside of the Pakistani region, where they are able to carry out attacks like they carried out
Khalid,
today in
but more importantly, do you believe that what is happening on front of TTP has got something to do with TTA? Because TTA always distances themselves from such developments. They say we are not behind it. In every time of negotiation, in every round of negotiations, they have negated to support any such attacks inside Pakistan by TTP.
Well, of course. I mean, we have on record Jalaluddin Haqqani, we have on record Sirajuddin Haqqani, we have on record Anas Haqqani saying that the TTP is a Pakistan problem. They are based in Pakistan. They have no presence inside of Afghanistan, which is an absolute flat-out lie. We know they have complete access inside of Afghanistan. They are in Nuristan. They are in Kunar. They are in Bagshag. They are spreading throughout Afghanistan, and they are doing it with the support of the Haqqani network. They are doing it with the support of Al-Qaeda, and they are doing it with the support of the TTP, of the Taliban. So we have to understand the Taliban is now playing a word game with Pakistan. This is going to develop into a very significant issue after Ramadan. And what Pakistan needs to understand is we need to establish a very firm footing. We need to seal the borders with Afghanistan. Because the Afghan fighters, the attack that was carried out today in Meher Ali was carried out by an Afghan national, not by a Pakistani, but by an Afghan national that had been recruited by the TTP and armed with a vehicle to attack a Pakistani military installation. Afghanistan cannot wash their hands of what's happening in their country. And Afghanistan has turned into, again, a centerpiece for terrorist activity, and they are now becoming a centerpiece where they are going to export terrorism throughout the region, not just Pakistan, but Iran, the Central Asian republics, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. Everyone is now a target from Afghanistan.
Khalid, help us to understand the problems that the Central Asian republics that you just listed out are facing because of Taliban. Because on this side of the world, on this side of the media, perhaps because of the language barriers, because of the lack of interest that the international media has in the Central Asian republics, we do not hear a lot about their activities in the Central Asia.
Well, in Central Asia, you have to understand the border area with Tajikistan is completely controlled by the Tajiks. And the Tajiks have been, while they at one point were loyal to the Taliban, when the Taliban decided that they were going to move the TTP into these Tajik-controlled areas to appease Pakistan's demands for more security control of the border region, the Tajiks decided that they were going to form their own group. So now you have the Taliban Tajikistan, who is fighting against the Tajik state. The same problem you have with Uzbekistan. Uzbek are inside of Afghanistan. They have full support of the Taliban. They have full support of ISKP, and they are looking to build their ability to be able to attack inside of Uzbekistan. The same problem exists with Turkmenistan. The same problem exists with Iran. This is a problem that is now going to become very, very significant after Ramadan. We are privy to a conversation that happened in Bajor roughly 3 weeks ago, where Sirajuddin Haqqani very clearly said that all of these groups that are rejoining the Taliban are rejoining with the intention that Nur Wali Masood will be removed as the leader of the TTP. Now, we do not know if that's going to happen within a month afterwards, within 2 months afterwards, but for a change at the top of the TTP, we expect this to turn into a major conflict both inside of Afghanistan, in the Central Asian republics, China, and Pakistan.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, but we are running out of time. Thank you very much for your valuable inputs in this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, as Syed Muhammad Khalid has said, this is not only Pakistan that is facing problem because of Afghanistan. The spillover effect of the militants inside Afghanistan is haunting all of Afghanistan's neighbors, including the Central Asian republics, including Iran, and there are also concerns for the rest of the region. It is very important for us to see how does Afghan government respond to these challenges. With regards to this morning's attack, I can only say every drop of blood of Pakistani soldiers keeps a scar in our hearts. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.